Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Creation show. I'm your host, Rebecca Boswell. And today, as always, we're going to be looking at how choice creates, and different possibilities for creating a life and a living that can actually work for you, whatever that is. So today we are joined by special guest, Delany Delaney, and she is joining us from Bali, so on the other side of the world, from Austin, Texas, where I am tonight. And we have a really fun topic to play with today. So our topic today, telepathy and beyond, creating an unexpected and glory-filled life. So originally from us, I love it. Originally from Australia, Delany, you have up and just changed everything since last spring, right?
Totally.
And so as we launch into this, I'm sure over the course of our conversation, instead of giving you a whole big title and description, we do have one of those. It will be in the show notes. And if you've been following along on Facebook this week, you will see, of course, we introduced her properly on Monday. But Delany is a performer. She is a beautiful musician. I love the songs that I've been hearing coming out. So beautiful. The duet that you have with your friend. I just
Rosie.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. Loved it. And you're also a facilitator of people, of beings, of, well, probably a lot more things than even just that. I know at some point we'll probably get into the earth and different ways that energies speak to you. I know that you're a master communicator, and I'd love to dive into that a little bit today too. I happen to know the work or the play that you and Glenn Shepherd have done together. There will be a link to the beautiful movie that the two of you put together. So we will talk a little bit about that as well. Communicating beyond words. And so, really just in business, in life, facilitating people to choose and perceive greater than just what meets the eye. So thank you so much for being here today and speaking with us on this topic.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. And we were going to be outside, but it's so hot today, and there's plowing in the rice fields. So it was a little bit noisy for
I love it. Well, meanwhile, back in Texas, it's very cold. So we get to have all of it on this beautiful planet of ours.
Yes,
so
we sure do.
So Delany, let's start out, if we can, telepathy and beyond. And I was just wondering if we could just start right out of the gates with a little bit of an understanding from your point of view. What is telepathy? And then see where we can go from there.
Absolutely. For me, and through the work that Glenn and I did and with other beings, it is so much more when we use it than just mind-to-mind communication. It includes that. And yet really it's about a molecular conversation, actually communicating with all the molecules in whatever way, shape or form that actually shows up. So yes, it's let's develop our capacities for communication beyond words. We've all had those experiences, where we think of someone and they're calm, or, like we find the magic parking places, we hear things, and like we all have these experiences that often we will discount as coincidence or whatever. And what we're talking about with this movement is let's really acknowledge all of these capacities for communication that goes beyond the spoken word, and let's really dive with the magic of choosing to create a life and have a life that really is thrilling, and one that you get up every day going, yay. And yes, there are tough moments of, like I'm not pretending that, hey, my life is this picture book that nothing is ever challenging. I haven't got there yet. Every
Yeah.
day, I am so grateful I get up, and every day those capacities get stronger and stronger to communicate with the molecules, to communicate with my partner in a different way than speaking words, to communicate with animals and receive the gifts that they have. You know, there's just the planet. There is just so much. And now is the time. Not next year. It's actually now is the time. We see what's going on around us with the planet. It's time for us.
So when did you begin? Yes, I get it. And so everyone watching, if you're getting a little kind of like fizzle thing up your back and it's like, I don't know what she's talking about, and it sounds a little crazy, but there's your body is doing something that it normally doesn't do. What could your body know about this? And maybe just keep asking it what it can show you, so that you can have that communication with your body, and then also the earth and everything that is greater than just what we see in the here and now. Now, Delaney, did you,
I just wanted to say that for people, if you're sitting there and going, this is a little confusing, just start to play with the ideas of about the times that you have actually thought of someone and they have called you, or you've run into someone that you haven't seen in 2 years or 10 years and you've been thinking about them, and start to expand your definition of what communication is. So those times when you sit next to somebody and you just feel good, or someone comes to you and goes, oh, you just put your hand on me and I just felt better. It was just what I needed. This is the communication I'm talking about with telepathy and beyond.
Yeah.
You know, even just the simple things to expand your definitions so that you can begin to engage in a way with magic that's actually really pragmatic as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because when you say that, what I realize is how often it's like we're willing to receive that when it's maybe something uncomfortable or not, like for instance, if someone goes into a subway station and it's really frenetic and chaotic and there's like a to it, right? It's like I think it's very easy to kind of go into that and take that and be that too. Yes. And not necessarily acknowledge, but if you were to look at it, say, oh yeah, well, that was at the train station, so I was like that, and not really think anything of it. Whereas if you go into a beautiful place, you know, and there is this invitation to really take on and receive from that energy as well, we may still be more likely to go into our minds, think about something that's not working from the past, or you know what I mean, and not necessarily receive it as easily. So I wonder, as we're beginning to realize that we are tapped into things and having this molecular communication throughout our day, you know, what are some of the, if we take the word notice, right, and say it's like, okay, so now notice, but if we take that word notice and what that actually is, can we expand that and unpack that a little bit about, okay, so what could that look like to notice and begin that practice?
Exactly. And like you were saying, you know, even in that exact situation of going in, you're in a city and you go into the subway. I remember my first time in a subway in Tokyo, and I don't really like closed in spaces for a start. And so to go into the subway is a big thing for me. And the first morning we were jumping on it because I was facilitating classes in Tokyo. So I had people with me helping me get to where I was going. But it was like, whoa, and then getting in the train and like people all over me, and it was really, really intense. And by the time we got to the venue, you know, like, whoa, I had to do some work to actually just be present, you know. And then I realized, oh, hang on, I wasn't present with myself. I was at the effect of all this. So the next time I went, I gave notice. I paid attention to everything. And I actually worked. This is the conversation with the molecules I talked about, where I was, okay, we're going to expand out in all directions. That energy, that spirit, that being that is me. Expand that, allow that to be as big as it can be. And rather than put up barriers, push down the barriers. And what was amazing, nowhere near the same amount of people actually came close to me, and there were just as many people in the subway. It was like there was this space. And even on the train, even though there were so many people, I no longer felt crushed. And physically, I wasn't being crushed either.
Yeah.
So even science says your thoughts create your reality. So that's a molecular conversation. It's all molecules vibrating. So what power do we have, Rebecca, when we're willing to pay attention rather than ignore, or, I've got to put up the barriers and protect myself? No, the biggest protection is vulnerability and putting down your barriers and being aware. What's required next? What's required next?
Yeah. And I mean, how often do we think we have to protect ourselves, and we're actually creating separation? And that's separation from ourselves and from this greater possibility of conversation and communion with the molecules and with everything. And I know that that can just be like a just seem so big and sweeping. And yet, what if it also just is?
and what gets me too, because it's really easy to go to the space, oh my God, that's all overwhelming and it's so much. And yet we will engage with energy that creates stress, discomfort for our bodies, diseases that will actually kill us in the end. And we don't consider that work, but we consider actually engaging in the other as work. We're cute. We're very, very cute, So this conversation you're listening is to open up. What have you got to lose? Yeah,
well, and that's what's so interesting. I mean, I look at it all the time where people are fully willing to spend 85% of their waking hours worrying. And having the point of view that that's like smart, responsible, justified, rational, right? And to play in possibilities and creation of what could be that's desirable is viewed as naive or irresponsible or whatever adjective you want to use. And yet they're both creations, right? So it's like, where would you like to play? And what does each of those different types of conversations, what does that create in your body, right? Like I know if I go into worry and stress, my body goes, and if I'm going into expansion and possibility and all the things, and it's like, and that creates so much more space in my body and just my space of being. And neither of them really are more real than the other. I mean, they're both very real when you choose them.
Yes.
And yet there's like neither of them is ever more real unless you make it so. Right?
This is the irony of it. And that engaging with that magic of, and I call it magic because to me it is, it's, wow, we can change things that quick. We can change from feeling like, I really, to, oh, wow, I'm so grateful for you. Like we can actually change things that fast. Yeah.
It's like the
that
child.
To me is magic. Exactly.
Like the child that falls and skins its knee, right? And it's like, oh, it hurts. And someone's like, do you want a lollipop? And they're like, lollipop?
Yeah.
I mean, and it really is just like that.
It is just like that. And the more we practice it, the more it comes like that. And that is no different to when we're talking about telepathy, because I'm very committed to the whole movement of communication beyond words. I love words. I'm a songwriter and a writer. So I absolutely love words. This is not about getting rid of words completely. But anytime you're using words, it does limit and it does define. Once you go into defining something, you are caging it in. And the language of energy, which is one that, like I said before, you know, someone can touch you, or you can just touch someone, or not even touch, just be with them, and you feel better. Your whole body actually de-stresses. You might have had a headache and it's not there anymore. You might have had a tummy upset and it's not there anymore. Yeah. That's what we're talking about with telepathy, with communicating with each other beyond words. And it can come to, my partner got me, it can be even more simpler than that. He looked at me the other night, like, and just looked at me and looked, and I just laughed because I could hear him saying, please make me pancakes. Please make me pancakes now. It was like I could hear it. And I laughed, you know, because we're practicing, we're building those muscles. And so it can be to that space of simplicity as well, of please make me pancakes, to something far more expansive and not even words, you know, where it is about an energy that you're being, and energy being the first language, and the word. That's the beauty of music. Just let me get that one in. The beauty of music is that it is a language undefined. And so you can get people together. And I've done this, facilitating voice and singing with people that don't speak English. And the magic that happens, the magic that goes on is phenomenal. Music is a language that doesn't have the word barrier. So...
Yeah, it's all of art. We had Bettina Medini on a few weeks ago, and she was looking at art. She's also a trained singer, but we were talking a lot about her artwork, her visual artwork, her paintings, her wearables, and it's, you know, it's such a similar conversation. It's just a different medium where, you know, when we work with words, they're these wonderful little packages, you know, and they have a little something in it, but, you know, just because you have some sand inside the package, that's not like all the sand. It's just a little taste of it, you know. It's like a little bit. Or, you know, a word can be a signpost. So if you have a sign that points to Austin, it doesn't mean that the sign is Austin. It just means that it's giving you a general direction to kind of get towards this bigger thing. So they're wonderful to begin to take all of this and start to get people to come along on the journey with you. It's just not necessarily the end all be all, when we can, you know, add so many different flavors into the words to have them mean slightly different things, or have us perceive slightly different things, even with the same word. So I'm really... Yeah. So with music, of course, you have notes, but you know, it's very, there's more like with color and sound and notes. It's all just so much more undefined, like you said, while still, like, you know, inviting you to something very specific. So with telepathy, when did you begin to recognize it in your life, and how did it start showing up as something that you were willing to acknowledge?
I definitely had capacities with it when I was a child. And like for many of us, those capacities were made very wrong and made people very uncomfortable. You know, I would even as a very young child, I would at times say things to people, and the response from an adult, like my mum or dad or somebody else, would be, how did you know that? And not a happy, wow, how did you know that? It was like, how the hell did you get that out of my head? Whereas I wasn't even thinking about it as that. And I also, I saw, you know, disembodied beings. I had, you know, which scared a lot of my family. And so, you know, I kept making that smaller and smaller and trying to lock that away. And then, but all through, like as a kid, I would fantasize about a world where we communicated telepathically. You know, I'd be walking to school, and my fantasies were about things like that, where we communicated mind to mind, and where there weren't the walls and the barriers and the separation, and that we didn't have to have secrets, because the life I had as a child was not very pleasant in many ways, and there were a lot of secrets. So then, as I would play with things. In the late 70s, early 80s, it would have been, I experimented with the hallucinogenics a lot. I was a pretty wild child, and so I played a bit with telepathic communication with people in that era, and then again left it all behind. And then it was when I started to work with people labelled disabled, who I found had really unique abilities, and I was working with them in the area of performing arts after a while. And by the time I started doing that, I really started to have many experiences that were showing me that I was communicating with people that didn't speak, and then I knew what they need. And many of us do. I've worked with parents a lot over the years and been able to ask them questions and get them to open up their awareness that they're communicating with their child telepathically. You know, they just haven't been able to acknowledge it, you know. And so that was where it began. And then when I met Glenn Shepherd, he and I just went on a many years journey of exploding my resistance to telepathic communication. And,
can you give us the Cliff Notes story there about who Glenn is, how you guys came together? And of course, like I said, I will put the video link in the show notes, but can you tell us a little bit about that journey and
yeah, sure.
what was created there? Mm-hmm.
I met him as I was co-creating a disability arts movement on the Sunshine Coast where I was based. And I somehow met him, or I read his work, his poetry. And I was asked if I'd read something at an event, and I said yes. And from that moment, I was fascinated by him, because he used a mode of communication called facilitated communication, which is having someone hold your hand and while you're pointing to letters on a board. And he has high-level autism, like really no speech, very few filters, completely, you know, information overload a lot of the time. And he, at that stage, he wasn't acknowledging telepathic communication very much either, speaking it out to people, but he knew, and he identified in me somebody that, you know, that there was this possibility there. And so, and I was fascinated. I wanted to learn how to communicate on the board with him. And it happened very fast for me because of that telepathic ability. And then very quickly, I started to hear him in my head, and I did all sorts of tests with the guy. I would say, okay, if that's you, then you're going to need to tell me what I'm thinking, you know, like, so we did that. Yeah. And then it really, you know, it opened up very quickly. And that was a lot of years ago. And there weren't very many people around at all who could deal with that. And he and I had trouble dealing with that as well. You know, it was because there wasn't anyone to talk to.
So what was challenging about it? Was it, you know, was it just, here we are faced with something that can't be true, and yet you're trying to reconcile that it is true, and it just is a dissonance? Or like, what was so challenging about it?
How to move, like the communication itself, that was not the challenge. Okay. It was dealing with the judgments and projections, to communicate how we communicated together requires no barriers. And so I had to be willing to allow this person to have access And that was really challenging at times. And he didn't really have the awareness of how to do that with any tact either. So, and we had no one to communicate with about this. Like, how do you move forward with that? What's the way to go? And yet we had more and more projections and expectations and demands, and my partner at the time getting jealous, and my, you know, it became very, very complex.
Yeah.
And he wanted more. He was demanding more. And so in the end, I actually ran away. I stopped working with him for a few years. And then when we got back together, we went on a really big journey. And then by the beginning of this year, he had realized that he did not want to do that journey anymore. Physically did not want to travel.
Yeah.
And do everything that we had planned to do. And so I had to let him choose for him as well, which was that was a journey in itself.
Yeah.
But that communication has not shut down. You know, like I realized, like, there are beings that I communicate with that contribute greatly to me, that are not greater than me, but that actually contribute. And I channel stuff by someone that worked with Glenn and I as well, who contributed to us. So I've continued that journey, and now am taking that into the world.
Yeah.
As I
That's
said,
amazing.
I think it's really time now.
And do you still, every now and again, do you perceive or communicate with Glenn, even though he's still back in Australia, or does it not work that way?
Not only because we both need, you know, we both need space.
Yeah,
that's a deep relationship. That's like losing, you know, it's like losing a partner. It's like that. That's the kind of life change that we did.
Yeah.
So I'm being very honest about this.
Yes. Well, thank you.
And so, because very few, only a very small amount of people in the world have had the kind of relationship that he and I had, and the intimacy of that. So,
yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I just lost your picture. Where are you?
I still see you.
Oh, good.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so interesting. I mean, here, you know, I feel like lots of times when we look at intimacy with another person, you know, we just have it defined as, you know, a sexual relationship, or, you know, somehow it has to do with, you know, romance, you know, intimate, lots of times gets romantically linked, or, you know, physically somehow like that. And the relationship I know that you had with Glenn, I mean, it's, when we say intimacy, I mean, when you're with someone and there is literally no separation between the two bodies and what's going on in terms of what you know and, you know, what you're thinking, I could see that as being pretty intense. I think we may have lost you. Let's see. Well, hopefully she will come back shortly. But, you know, there is when we drop those barriers, and lots of times our barriers go up because we think that, you know, we can protect ourselves. We don't want people to know our true selves, or we don't want to be vulnerable. And a lot of this work, when we do allow those barriers to drop, when we do allow ourselves to be more space, it does offer so much more communion. And at the same time, I think that's her, there we go. And at the same time, it also, you know, it allows us to actually experience far greater than we ever have. So let's see if she can get back on. Okay. So like I said, the notes, or the link to this beautiful video, the two of them. And so if you're kind of wondering a little bit about this relationship and what she's talking about, I think when you watch the short film, I think you'll really get a sense of what we're talking about, and you know, this sense of intimacy, which is, you know, different than anything I've ever experienced in witnessing a relationship between two people. Really, from my point of view, very beautiful thing. So yes, going beyond the words, being able to communicate, not just in standard fashion as we are used to. So let's see if we can get her back on. And I wonder if you're watching right now, which you are, you know, what is telepathy for you? I mean, when you hear the word telepathy, what is it that pops into your awareness? And are there places where you have actually experienced telepathy, experienced communication that showed up in a different form, either information through your body? You know, I've experienced myself and worked and heard from a lot of other people that work with bodies a lot, you know, that oftentimes the body worker will perceive something in their body that's actually being received from the body that's being worked on the table. So that is another way, that would also be another way of communicating beyond words or telepathically between the bodies. Lots of times we pick things up and we just assume that it's our body, when actually it's our body giving us information about another body near us. I remember the first time experiencing that and thinking, oh, wow, my knee hurts. Why is my knee hurting? And then realizing, oh, that's actually not my knee. That's the knee on the table that is like that. And asking the person that I was working with, you know, is there something going on with your left knee? And they said, how did you know that? Yes. And then there was this whole big story, and we were able to actually look at that. And believe it or not, it actually changed what was going on, and the intensity that was going on for them with their body and with what had happened. So, you know, when we're talking about having this molecular conversation, you know, you can, even just by addressing it, even by just me acknowledging it in them and addressing it together, it changed what was showing up in that person's body. The actual molecules changed. There was the intensity of the pain was no longer there. So, so yeah, where have you maybe experienced something like that? Or been thinking about someone and then they called, or thinking about someone and then see them the next day, or know somebody's going to say something or do something and then they do it. Because the more that we start to acknowledge these things and not just write them off, the more we can actually play with them. And what if it's actually a gift that the more we use, the more can contribute to us and also those in our lives. So maybe not discounting it. What would that create? Yeah. So, you know, I know lots of times with telepathy, you know, you might picture someone with a, you know, metal colander on their head, or, you know, science fiction movie, or, you know, whatever you might picture. But what if there's something between that and it not existing at all? And what if each of us has a different capacity for moving along that spectrum? And what would it be like if more of us were to acknowledge those capacities and begin, yeah, playing with them more? Now, as we know from Spider-Man, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And yeah, what would it take to create greater with these capacities? So it looks like and one of the other things that we will have a link for is Delaney is beginning, I believe it's November 19th, and we can confirm that when she's back on. But she has a program coming up that looks like it's going to be amazing, and gives you a little bit more exposure to her and the classes that she does facilitate across the globe. The world has become very small for her. She goes all over the place. And you know, being able to dive more into this conversation. The class itself, let me just pull that up because I did not have the name of it right here. So it is called, okay, so it is Telepathy and the Trans Talents, Transformational Activations, and Energy Poles. So if you're asking to have a little bit more of this playing with molecules and with energy, if any of that intrigues you at all, and this communication beyond words, then this is a multi-part series that you can participate in. And it's 15 live calls. So from wherever you're calling, 15 live calls, and then 4 days of reviews and surprises. And it goes through from Monday, November 19th through until Friday, December 7th. So it's a 19-day stretch. And let's see, I know at some point they extended the early bird, but I think we're probably out of that by this point. She says, experience the magic of a quantum leap forward on your life's journey. So what would it be like to take a quantum leap forward? Have you been asking for something like that? Are you aware that there is more available to you in this area, but just haven't been sure how to go about beginning to play with it, or to play with it more, or to find playmates to play with? So could this be it? Let's see. Let's see. Okay, and now Delaney, welcome back. And yeah, so I was telling our viewers a little bit more about the film, and then I told them a little bit about your upcoming program. But before we get too far away, I know we were having an interesting conversation about intimacy and about you know, when there's no hiding and no separation between yourself and another human being. And was there anything else that you wanted to comment on that before we move on?
Just to acknowledge, I think the gift. I'm really aware of how lucky I am to have experienced that. And it gives me this thrill of us all being on this journey of expanding, you know, our awareness of things that are different, things that we have in the past been led to believe are nonsensical or weird or strange or devilish or many, many other, you know, ridiculous, and to have embodied that, to experience what that can be like, has given me some really unique insights and awarenesses around what is possible. And it thrills me to be part of the journey of expanding and exploring that with people.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it does bring more ease and joy. You know, like with anything, when you first begin to build these muscles, it can be, wow, you know, it can be intense. And yet what it gives you to play in these realms is a sense of wonder and curiosity and gratitude and the thrill of being here in a body with this planet right now.
Yeah.
And isn't that wonderful? Isn't that something worth exploring and opening up to?
Yeah. And, you know, creating your unexpected and glory-filled life. So, you know, you mean it hasn't all gone exactly the way you thought it would?
Oh, very little of it has gone how I thought it would.
But wait, I thought we had to plan it all out, get it all right, and that's the only way to have a good life.
Oh,
You're
God,
blowing my
yes.
mind.
Yeah, I know. What do you mean? What do you mean? No, it hasn't gone to plan. It still doesn't go to plan. And the random, unexpected, irrational choices that I make just continue to explode my life. This was where I'm living. This was not part of the plan.
Yeah.
When I came here, I had a plan. It was like, okay, we're going here and it's about the business. It's about building the business online. This is what it's about. And then I get here and it's like really quickly, actually, you know how you haven't been having this communion with your body and how you haven't been caring for it? Actually, this is kind of a priority right now.
It's so funny how our bodies can sometimes trick us too. Because when, you know, you said, you know, I had this plan about what Bali was all about. And I'm like, oh yeah, your body and, you know, being in nature and the elements and, you know, and then you said business. And I was like, what? But your body's like, don't tell her. We'll let her think it's business. And then when her body is happy, when we're happy, then the business will just, it will create itself so much more easily because the business will be happy too.
Exactly. And that is exactly what's happening. I've been here a few months. I have cared for my body more than I ever had. That does not mean I've had a couple of slam moments where my body's gone, girlfriend, you ain't listening. You know, and so, but it's like, it's incredible what my body is creating now. And of course, when I finally was ready to release this upcoming program and put out a Zoom call and had hundreds of people actually, you know, sign up for that. And this program has had the most signups that I've ever had. And there's a super strong contingent from Israel. There's German-speaking countries, there's French-speaking countries, and there's America and Australia and New Zealand. And
you're doing translations, I saw, as well on this call.
Yes. Yeah. And all of those people have actually approached me to do that, by the way. And so, because that creates its own thing to have all of those translations, let me tell you. And both my partner and the beginnings of like systems and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, that is what the energy is. And I mean, I know people that would, you know, just be beside themselves to have those kind of invitations from people, you know, and so I've just had to go with gratitude and here we go and just keep moving forward with what feels good and keep letting things go. You know, everywhere that you lock yourself down with, it has to look this way. Yeah. You really are setting yourself up for a hard time. Yeah. And there's nothing like you've got a plan. You know, you want to look at where you'd like to be and what you'd like to have. But then it's okay, and this is where the communication with your body. Yeah. You can't have telepathic communication if you're not going to actually allow that communication with your body. Yeah. You know, that's where that comes from, you know, that. And so, well, it comes from beyond there, but it includes your body. Yeah. It includes your body. And so that's one of the first things is about actually getting with yourself. And as I said before, if you allow that energy of you, the spirit, the being that is you, to expand out as far as it possibly wants to, and you drop your barriers, now we start to enter a space where we are present where we're more present, where we connect with our bodies. And these bodies are my God, the gift that they are, not just in that they move us around from place to place, what they know. We don't even know what they know. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's only recent months that I discovered that in 1992, a scientist called Amore, by the way, the French word for love, discovers that in our heart, the muscle that is our heart has its own brain. There are over 40,000 neurons. Yeah. Like that is, and they operate like a brain, but without thought. So all those neurons want connection. They're all looking for connection. So you have all that going on without a thought process. So your body actually has keys for you.
Yeah.
In this journey of communication beyond words and of connecting, some would call it intuition, some call it knowing, like actually having that deep, expansive connection with what is beyond normal. And this is not airy-fairy. This is a time when there are scientists who are interested in consciousness, who are interested in the magic that being here and being in a body is. And so we have all of this incredible research, which we don't even need, but boy, it's fun to have. So if you're listening and going, oh, that's all a bit, well, go and look at neuroscience and consciousness. Start to actually broaden your awareness of what is going on in the world so that you actually do create a life that you want to have. Because that's what this is about. Because when you create a life that is great, when you have a life where you are being the best you can be, that creates amazingness in the world. And that's how we're creating a different reality, is not by fighting. It's not by separation. It's actually by doing whatever is required and being whatever is required to go beyond separation.
Yeah.
And to engage with everything that we know. So all of those, one of the things about telepathy and beyond, start to notice, as you said, I love that, start to notice and note down the times that you do magic things. You know when you've looked for something and it wasn't there, and because you've gone and you have been looking for this thing and you have gone into that bag or onto that table 6 times and it was not there. And then you come a day later and it's there. Now, our brain wants to actually explain that away, that you didn't look good enough, the blah, 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 blah. I challenge you to stop your brain from being the one in control and acknowledge that you do move things around.
Wow.
And that there is magic at play here. And start to see the energy on it change, where if you're willing to actually play, okay, so just for a moment, let's go with that. Let's go with that. I'm playing tricks on myself to show myself that I have capacities and abilities. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're so quick to prove how we don't. And yet to allow acknowledgement of what we have created somehow is a lot more challenging, can be.
It totally is for most people. And that's what you've got to get as well. You're not alone in this. You're not alone in the skepticism. You're not alone in your doubt. But none of that is real. And yet we will buy that as real rather than...
And prove it.
In a different possibility. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's just hang on to that, And I've had so many magical experiences. I remember a friend of mine asking me to come and meet a man who was in his 70s that was a dear friend of hers, and he'd had a push bike accident because even though he was in his 70s, he used to ride kilometres every day. So I get to the hospital and I'm running a process exit stage left, it's called, which allows the being and the body to have more space around when something traumatic is happening. Yeah. And so I walk into that room and I put my hands on this man, and he just looked at me and said, I'm going to call you Golden Hands, because he could perceive the energy. Now, this was someone who was not into any woo-woo at all.
Yeah.
He was in a space of vulnerability because of what he'd created with that accident. And it was whether he was going to live. Yeah. And so I just spoke with him and listened to him. And I sat down in a chair. I was running healing processes on his body, or with his body. And his wife went into like shock, because he started to tell me about his childhood, about everything. And that changed the rest of his life, that one visit. So where are you also not acknowledging what you create in the world just by being you? And when you're willing to step beyond the normal, and you don't even have to think about it, because a lot of this stuff is actually about not thinking, and just start to acknowledge all of the times in your life that there's been magic communication, whether it be with a body, whether it be mind to mind. You've heard your kids long distance, you've heard your partner say
with
something.
babies all the time.
It's, this stuff that has been denied and decried, it's insane, because it's actually a part of life. It is a part of life, and all of us have experienced it in some way, shape or form. And like anything, we got to practice. We got to acknowledge, keep opening up, and practice.
And practice. So I remember when my daughter was born, she's my first child. I have two. And I remember her being in her room and me waking up and realizing that as soon as I would think about her, as soon as I like tapped into her, and I just thought it was thinking about her. But as soon as she came into my awareness, she would wake up, she'd cry. And so I would play with this, and I would wake up and I would almost like bubble myself, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be in here for a little bit. I'm going to bubble myself until I was ready to get up. And then I would like play with it, and I'd be like, okay, bubble down. And then within minutes, she would wake up, and it was like, wow, this is really crazy. No one would believe me, but I know for a fact, right? I know that this is happening for real. She even told me her name when I was only 2 weeks pregnant, and and I knew who she was going to be already. And and it's like, oh, that makes a really nice story. And you can say, well, you had a 50% chance that it was going to be a girl. But you can just dismiss these things. You know what, even if just to play, as they say, devil's advocate, even if it is completely make-believe, okay, well, do you want to play and believe in the make-believe that feels terrible and contracts your body and makes you feel alone and separate? Or would you be willing to play with these other things that are more expansive, more fun, right? And then hey, and when you get to a place where you're like, there's something here, then okay, even better. But even if you don't believe anything, which just feels better, which actually just is more enjoyable in your day. You talk about having a glory-filled life, right? And I know one of the definitions for glory is an exuberant expression of life. Yes, and being out in the world. So what is actually bringing you closer to that? And would you be willing to choose it, even if it's a little weird? And nobody goes down in history for excelling at normalcy. So
they don't.
So
they don't.
It's if you want to be as normal as you can be, great. And what else is possible when that's not actually so important?
Totally. And are you happy with how things are? If you're happy with how your life is and you don't, then that's your choice. That's the beauty of this.
Yeah.
But if you're actually asking for more, if there's somewhere in you that just is no, there is more, or if you're already on the journey of, I know there's more, then what else is possible? And where can we go with this together? And it is not about that I know everything. I don't. I know that I'm a catalyst to doorways opening. Just like some words are catalysts to doorways of possibility. And so the more I engage in that, the more I contribute to creating a greater reality, one where kindness is valued, true kindness, not I'm being nice, so you have to be nice, just true kindness and contribution. You know, this is this thing, because most of us actually like to contribute. Yeah. And sometimes we misidentify contribution, you know, controlling and trying to tell people what to do with contributing. So if we can be that space that is relaxed and is not trying to push things at people, but just actually an invitation to something different and looking at what it is that lights us up. If you keep following, like, oh, when I do that, I feel good. When I really feel good. Every time I'm with that person, I always walk away feeling good. Yeah, well, visit that person a lot. You know, like actually do the things that light you up, because then doorways open and your awareness of all sorts of things opens up. And you know, just we have a little warung up the road that's run by a Balinese couple, and that's a cafe. And so we're becoming close friends. They speak English, which is such a gift for us. And they have dogs, and I'm down with this little fluffy dog who'd been ill. And Richard said, well, what do you get? And I said to her, so all I'm getting is salt. And they had the vet out twice. They'd been trying this and trying that. I was like, I'm sorry, I am only getting salt. Anyway, next day we go up there, and she was like, you said salt. I just got some salt with a little bit of chicken, and she's eating again now. And so now this woman, because I said, oh, you know, I've been training in energy work for a number of years. And she said to me yesterday, I didn't know that you could train. I didn't know that you could learn this. I thought you either had this and it was there fully, or that was it. So now there is another person from a totally different culture and who's just opened their eyes to a completely different possibility with their life.
Wow.
That's just from sitting on the floor with the puppy and being me, going, I think he needs
some. Yeah. And her being able to look at herself and say, oh my gosh, what if I was being me? What can I do? What can I be? What have I not looked at yet? And yes, that does. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So, I mean, this whole conversation, you know, it's not about who has access to the kingdom. This is available, and you know, what do you know that you can add to this conversation? And you know, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. What can you do?
And then when we come together, what does that create? Like our conversation today, that's been a contribution to both of us.
Yeah, agreed.
You know,
now
how much fun.
Yes, very much. So I'm just wondering, before we wrap up, who is this program that you've created? Who is it for? Is it for somebody who's saying, I'd like to explore this more, I'd like to have more tools, I'd like to be able to notice more of what's going on with me and tease out my own superpowers?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a 19-day program. And so Monday to Friday, there'll be a live call. And that's working with, I really enjoy actually bringing the body into these things in a really big way. So we look at neural pathways and different things with the body that we can activate to contribute to this journey and to change any blocks, and limitations that we have, because we have a secret Facebook group as well, which we've already begun doing stuff. And so this is, you can put questions there. I mean, you can always send me questions as well. So we actually can pull out and tease out different aspects as we go along. And it's looking at the whole spectrum of different abilities. Like I was saying, those things where we move things around and even when we travel distances in shorter times. Have you ever done that? Where something it's supposed to take an hour and a half and you get somewhere in 45 minutes, and it's like, no, and another one will just explain away, what if that's a capacity? And so this program gives you energy pools, so that's using all of the energy in the universe and you and all of us to open information, exercises to do if you so choose.
Oh, cool.
And also that whole group to play with, because I found this year running programs and in the secret Facebook groups, we're actually very active in the groups, and I'm finding that really, really makes a difference to the program and what people are getting out of it, and just that encouragement and the different perspectives from people as well when people want to talk about something. So if you already are playing with this program is for you to exponentialize that. And if you're never played and you're going, God, this sounds interesting, then it's for you too, because this really is about really activating and expanding.
Excellent.
And Hebrew translation.
So
and
cool.
Someone from talking to me the other day, so there may be Chinese as well.
Wow, a truly global phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. This is very exciting. There's a big mob from Israel, and I'm just thrilled to have those people as part of the program as well this time. So I'm really interested to see what we will create. I think it's going to be, I know it's going to be so dynamic. And a couple of people have been writing in the group already, like just actually joining up for the program has changed stuff.
It's already started. It's already begun.
Yeah. So anybody listening to this, I am, because we've had it on sale and it's no longer on sale, from €142 down to 110, and there's global pricing as well. But I am really happy for people from this program to have it for the discounted price as well.
Excellent. Well, then, awesome. See, just for watching, you get to still have the early bird. And I'll make sure that I put that in the notes for you too. And is there any code or anything that they'll have to enter, or will
yes,
they just...
there's country codes down the side, and we'll make sure that they're active for people on Friday.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, that's really exciting. And I know that even just you all participating in that together, creating it together, already is changing things. I can perceive that already. The ripples, whether you call it the butterfly effect or dancing with the molecules, it's creating something different. So I wonder who all is going to choose it now as well.
I wondered.
An hour ago, you had no idea that this was even part of your world. And now suddenly, what would life be without it? So thank you so much, Delaney, for speaking with us, for bringing us through, showing us that there is so much more to communication than just what meets the eye or leaves the lips, involving our bodies, acknowledging what it is that we know, the information that comes through, that we're able to perceive, and the invitation to listen and to also trust that we may actually have a couple, 2 or 3 or more capacities than we thought possible. And yeah, what if we are all superheroes? We just haven't discovered it yet. And where
Yes.
have we discovered it? We just haven't acknowledged it. So if we will have the link to the program in the show notes. Is there any other way that people can find you if they'd like to work with you more?
Absolutely. Through the website DelaneYDelaney.com or on Facebook. I'm a big Facebook Messenger person. We're creating a whole tour of Europe the next year via Facebook Messenger. So you can always contact me through that as well. And Delaney at DelaneYDelaney.com or info@DelaneYDelaney.com will find me as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and we'll have that all listed as well for all of you watching if you don't have a pen handy. So Delaney, thank you so much. Is there any final words you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I guess it's something that didn't come up through there was I really do want to consciousness. And Gary Douglas and Dane Hare and Simone Melissus and Brendan Watt particularly, because that set of tools and work really has been a major contribution to me being okay with being the weirdo that I am.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I just really did want to acknowledge them and that body of work, because the tools and processes in that, I just find it's a one-stop for a whole swag of wonderful stuff. There's amazing stuff going on around the world now. I love it. I love it. That body of work really to me greatly.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And through you contributing to many, many others. And we're grateful to you for that. So thank you, Delaney, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody watching, for joining us, whether it was your first episode that you joined us for, or if you've been with us all through the first few seasons and several episodes. We're just glad to have you here. So I wonder what all you'll be choosing over the next week. We look forward to seeing you next week, and I wonder what we'll discover next. Bye-bye, everyone.
I wonder. Thank you. Awesome program. Thank you.